4, 3, 2.
Good hit.
The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars. Every nation has the right to self-defense under the United Nations Charter. Why shouldn't Israel exercise it?
Meet Mark Levine.
Good evening, America. I am Mark Levine, and we are 8 days before Election Day. Do you know who you're going to vote for? It's striking to me how the Republican Party appears to be turning on itself. We have John McCain fighting Sarah Palin and her supporters fighting his supporters. And we have a lot of dirty tricks going on. Right before I came to the studio, I got a call, a push poll, from a group that claimed to be Survey USA, which I know is a reputable pollster. So I took the call. They asked me who I was voting for. I said I was voting for Barack Obama. It wasn't a real person, you understand. It was just a computer. And then they tried to lie to me. They tried to push me to vote in a specific direction. They told me all kinds of things about Obama that just weren't true. Now, I don't know if this tactic disgusts you, but it certainly disgusts me. This kind of thing shouldn't happen, because if you have a reason to have an idea, a poll or something, do that. But it should not be ethical, it should not be legal, and it indeed may not be legal to push a certain point of view in a poll. See, people answer polls these days, and that makes sense. People want to know which side you stand. So this group, calling themselves the Americans United to Preserve Marriage, is playing a dirty trick. Now, I don't know if it's endorsed by the McCain campaign, but I call on you and I call on the McCain campaign to immediately denounce this. When it's done, I will call Survey USA and personally get them to denounce it. This kind of thing is unethical. But I guess it shouldn't surprise you or me or anybody else. The Republican Party seems to be falling apart. And that's why I welcome all the defections from a party that currently is focused on ignorance, fear, and hate. You know, the Republican Party used to be a very respectable party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, the party of Theodore Roosevelt. Many Americans supported Ronald Reagan. But today, it seems that even John McCain and Sarah Palin can't agree on the direction of the party. Perhaps it's because Sarah Palin is quite noticeably preparing her campaign to run for president in 2012. She is so prepared and so refusing to do what John McCain asked her to do that some McCain aide today told CNN Sarah Palin is acting like a diva. And no, he didn't mean her $150,000 clothes purchases. What he meant is that she is refusing to follow what John McCain is. And it's fascinating because it's not always clear who wants to go more negative. Sarah Palin has condemned these kinds of robocalls that John McCain has supported. But then if you look at the rallies, you find out that Palin is the one who never seems to speak back to supporters who say horrific stuff about Barack Obama, terrorist, and kill him, and the like. While John McCain, at least on one occasion, when a woman called Obama an Arab, said, no, Obama's not an Arab, he's a decent family man, as if the two were somehow mutually exclusive. What I find interesting is that the Republican Party does seem to be being deserted by Republicans. We see a number of Republicans who are going away from their party. Most recently, we have the former senator from South Dakota, Republican Senator Larry Pressler, has endorsed Obama. Stunning, really, for a conservative man from a conservative state. Charles Freed, former Solicitor General under Ronald Reagan, has said he's going to endorse Obama. Even the son of William F. Buckley, the founding father of the conservative movement, the person who founded the National Review, has said that he is voting for Obama. What explains all the defections? What is it about the Republican Party that has caused so many Republicans to distance themselves from it? Well, let me play for you a clip that explains some people's views on this, and then we'll get back to your views. By the way, you're always welcome to call in. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Here is a clip, if you will, of the current people who are attending John McCain rallies. See if you see a theme here. We'll play that right now.
No Obama! No Obama! No Free turbans!
No bomb. No bomb. No bomb.
He's got a rag on his head.
I had it up. James Thompson and I talked to him.
He's a Muslim communist.
Do you seriously think Barack Obama's a Muslim?
Yeah.
And he thinks he's a terrorist.
Why do you think he's a Muslim?
His wife made him say he's a Christian so he could get elected.
Socialist.
A true patriot.
Communist.
A true
He's a communist.
You read the Communist Manifesto, that's what you need to learn, because that's what you're all about.
Yeah. Hey, look it. The important thing is, God may not be on my
And then
side,
tell me what you do about the
but
fire.
Satan is on your side.
I don't want to be a communist. I don't want to be a socialist. I want to be an American. Everybody in their right mind would vote for an unqualified socialist.
Communist.
He's a stupid bum.
Yeah, bullshit. What a piece of crap he is.
Okay, so that is the essence of the people that are going to McCain rallies. What's striking to me is you don't see this kind of language at Obama rallies. They called him no good Muslim, a Muslim communist, a socialist, a terrorist. Somebody punched the Obama sign. They called him Osama, I guess after Osama bin Laden. A Muslim communist, a terrorist. They said Satan is on your side. They said that people who support Obama are not real Americans, and they are. Let me suggest to you that these people are un-American. That the same people who complain that supporters of Obama are not American are extremely un-American because they don't believe in democracy. You will not find Obama supporters that are using this kind of language about John McCain. I don't believe there's a single one that I've seen calling McCain a terrorist or Osama or a socialist or communist or any of these kind of ridiculous things. What's interesting is that many, many Republicans, many conservatives are backing away from this kind of hate. We've heard, in fact, I'm going to play for you later on in the hour, a clip by Nancy Pfotenhauer, the McCain aide, who said that, well, Northern Virginia is not real Virginia, as if anyone living right where you are, right in Fairfax County, Loudoun County, is fake. Also this hour, we're going to play Congressman Frank Wolf, who allowed some supporters of Congresswoman Judy Feder to be physically attacked. What is going on with this Republican Party? Why the anger? Why the violence or the angry words? Why can't people simply act in a democracy without the dirty tricks of push polling, without the dirty tricks of trying to keep people from coming to the polls? What is going on here? I want to discuss it with you. I want to encourage you to call in. It's 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. But first, I would like to show you a different kind of Republican Party, if you will. I want to show you a group of people who are conservative, who are Republicans, and why they have changed their mind. Let's go to the screen right now.
I voted Republican for the last 40 years. And this year I'm not voting Republican. I'm voting for Obama.
Emotionally, I'm still a Republican. Intellectually, I'm going to vote Democrat because it can't be worse than what I've been through. And hopefully, we'll move back the other way enough to make things better.
I was having such a hard time defending why I was voting for John McCain. And I found myself saying things that, to win an argument that I didn't even believe.
I grew up in a very religious household. My dad's a pastor, and so it generally all boils down to abortion. I am definitely a pro-life supporter and voter, and have been my whole life, and continue to feel that way. From my voting perspective, I've sort of released that as an issue in this campaign. It's something that we need to almost agree to disagree on in a short period and come together on these bigger issues, or else we'll never sort of get to that in the future.
You know, there's a lot of things I respect and used to respect more about McCain, of being outside of politics a little bit, or not the quintessential politician. And that's what I admired. But then, especially in the last few months, I feel like he just wants to be president of the United States. He doesn't want to be John McCain anymore. his choice for Vice President Palin. It didn't make sense to me. It seemed like a very calculated move. If you're going to make these calculated moves on a campaign trail, you're going to do it in the White House.
Senator McCain is going to be someone that tells you how we're going to do things. Not only us, but foreign powers. We can't do that at all anymore. We cannot tell the world what drum to march to. Simple reason, our drum is broken.
Barack Obama still upholds a lot of my conservative values in the way he takes personal responsibility for the things he believes in the way that he raises his family.
When you look at Senator Obama, when I say why I would really vote for him, I do believe that he does have the ability to bring people together. He's proved that already.
I want a true leader, and I feel like Barack is more of a leader than what my party's serving up to me right now.
He's not reactionary, and we've had enough problems with reactionaries. We've had enough problem with a knee-jerk reaction, and it's not getting us anywhere.
I would say that I am going to remain an economic conservative and a social traditionalist, but I'm going to vote the direction I think is best for my country, and in this case, that's Barack Obama.
When I look at the politicians that have made the greatest difference in the last 20 or 30 years, I look at Reagan and Clinton as two people who are ideologically very different, but were able to galvanize Americans behind the idea that things could get better and will be better, and they made it better. I don't see that in McCain. I very much do see that in Obama.
I voted Republican my whole life.
Lifelong registered independent.
I'm a Republican.
I'm a Republican.
I am a conservative. I'm a registered Republican.
I am a registered Republican.
I'm a registered Republican.
I will be voting for Senator Obama.
I've chosen Obama.
I'm voting for Barack Obama.
I'm voting for Obama.
And I'm voting for Obama.
I'm voting for Barack Obama.
I'm voting for Barack Obama.
I'm voting for Obama.
So what's fascinating to me is, I guess, the reflective Republicans, the intellectual Republicans. Former Senator Larry Pressler, Chris Buckley, son of William F. Buckley. People like professors at Pepperdine. The intellectuals, people who are strongly conservative, are running away from the Republican Party. And I think you have to ask yourself why thoughtful people are choosing Obama this year. Now, there are people who are, calling Obama a communist and a socialist and talking about his middle name Hussein and he's a terrorist and he's Satan and all that kind of stuff. It seems to me the Republican Party is at war with itself. It is split between its thoughtful intellectual wing and its, how else do we put it, its id, its inside, its instinct. The kind of thing that Sarah Palin brings out. And it'll be interesting to see in 2012 if Sarah Palin becomes the voice of this hate and this anger that is reflected in the Republican Party. I want to know what you think, though. If you think I'm full of it, let me know. 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Give me a call. Let me know what you think. We'll be right back after this.
Just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800-RUNAWAY.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. There was a powerful editorial in the New York Times by a Republican talking about his party called the Party of Yesterday. Let's show it right here. It's a column out of Seattle by Timothy Egan. And he talks about the fact, let's just show it up on the screen so people can find it. I don't know if you can see that. The Party of Yesterday. 2 years ago, he writes, a list of the nation's brainiest cities was put together from Census Bureau reports, the cities with the highest percentage of college graduates, vibrant, prosperous places. And among them, 8 of them consistently vote Democratic. There were 2, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Lexington, that voted Republican. This year, all 10 are going to go Democratic. What's more, with Colorado, New Hampshire, and Virginia now trending blue, Republicans will lose the nation's 10 best educated states. I want you to think about that. What does that mean? Why is it that educated people are deserting the Republican ship? Brainy cities, these cities with large proportions of college graduates, the author writes, have low crime, high job creation, ethnic diversity, creative capitalism. There are places like Pittsburgh with top-notch universities, Albuquerque with a surging Latino middle class, Denver with outdoor-loving young people. They grow good people in the smart cities. Republicans are doing something else. They're talking about us versus them. Republicans have been insinuating for years now that bright, productive communities are fake. They're not real American, they're fake Americans. And if the Republicans do that, the author says, they're doomed to be the party of yesterday. Let's look at the voice of McCain aide Nancy Pfotenhauer. She's someone who has often come on the air to defend John McCain. This is what she had to say about Northern Virginia.
I certainly agree that Northern Virginia has gone more Democratic. You know, as the proud resident of Oakton, Virginia, I can tell you that the Democrats have just come in from the District of Columbia and moved into Northern Virginia, and that's really what you see there. But the rest of the state, real Virginia, if you will, I think will be very responsive to Senator McCain's message.
Nancy, I'm going to give you a chance to climb back off that ledge. Did you say real Virginia?
I did say outside of Northern, well, I mean real Virginia, because Northern Virginia is where I've always been, but real Virginia I take to be this part of the state that is more southern in nature, if you will. Northern Virginia is really Metro D.C., as you're aware, Kevin.
So, Nancy, maybe you're watching right now. If you are, Nancy, I've got news for you. Those of us who live here in Northern Virginia consider ourselves real. We don't consider ourselves fake. We consider ourselves to have the same American citizenship as the more southern part of the state, as you talked about, in real Virginia. In fact, Northern Virginia actually provides much of the tax base for the state of Virginia. Northern Virginia has a lot of brainy people with education and college degrees, and frankly, a much stronger economy than the rest of the state. I'm not picking on the rest of the state. I'm saying, what is it about Republicans today? I shouldn't say Republicans, because many Republicans are moving away from their party. But the official Republican Party, why do they hate intelligence? Why do they hate education? Why do they believe in ignorance? Why do they believe in promoting ignorance? Just like this push poll from this group, Americans United to Preserve Marriage, that called me an hour ago in Alexandria, Virginia, and tried to lie to me. Luckily, I guess I'm too educated, I'm too smart to fall for these kind of illegal and unethical tactics by the McCain campaign. My question is this: do they have such little respect for Americans that they think will fall for it? Do they think we're all as stupid and ignorant and angry and fearful as the people you saw going to the McCain rallies, the people that were hitting Obama's poster and calling him a terrorist and a socialist and a communist? Let me suggest to you that Virginians, Northern Virginians particularly, and frankly Americans across the country, are not going to fall for this. Indeed, there's a reason why the educated wing of your party is leaving the Republican Party. Now, I've heard other people complain about this. I've heard that, for example, on Bill O'Reilly's show, he was talking with Dick Morris. And he was saying, we can't go and do the issues. If we do the issues, Obama wins. This is Bill O'Reilly saying this on his nationally syndicated show. He said in an interview with Geraldine Ferraro, he said, we have to play to people's emotion. That the only way McCain is going to win is to play to their emotion. If we go to the issues, we lose. And that may be true. But my question for you is, are Americans so dense, so stupid, so ignorant, so racist, so fearful, that they won't weigh the candidates on the issues? That they'll solely believe in these kinds of dirty tricks? What's fascinating to me is the people that Sarah Palin calls real Americans are the ones that she thinks fall for this kind of ignorant tripe. And the people that are fake Americans, the people that Nancy Pfotenhauer says are fake Virginians, aren't real, people like, oh, those that live in Fairfax County and Loudoun County and Alexandria and Arlington, people who watch this show, all of you, all of us, myself included, we're all fake. Why? Because we're too educated to fall for this kind of stuff. So I want to know from you, look, I don't care if people are ignorant. I understand they're ignorant people. Not everyone's educated. I'm not knocking on educated people, all right? I happen to be very well educated. I understand that. I hope you don't hold it against me, and I won't hold it against you if you don't even have a high school degree. We're all Americans here. We all have an equal right to vote. But it strikes me that Republicans used to believe in education. They used to believe in going to college. They used to believe in graduate school. They used to think that education was the ticket out. That education was the embodiment of the American dream. They used to support things like Pell Grants. Now you know Republicans are against student loans while Democrats are for them. The Republican Party of today reminds me very much of a party that was back in the 1830s. The name of the party, led by former President Millard Fillmore, was the Know Nothing Party. The Know Nothing Party fervently hated education, fervently hated intellect. They were the kind of people that Bill Kristol dismisses as intellectuals. They hated those people. And they actually weren't those kind of people at all. They hated those people. And it seems to me that the battle today between Obama and McCain is not so much a battle of conservative versus liberal. We see a lot of conservatives deserting the McCain camp and joining with Obama. But a battle of educated versus ignorant. Now, if John McCain wants to talk about his policies, that's fair. He should talk about his policies in the debates. But his campaign manager, Rick Davis, said if we talk about the issues, we lose. Why is that? Why is it that if John McCain talks about the issues, he loses? I think you know the reason. George Bush has the lowest approval rating of any president in the history of American polling. He has the highest disapproval rating of any president in the history of American polling. And John McCain, well, he supports President Bush 90% of the time. When we come back, I'll play you the clip, as he has bragged in the past about supporting George Bush 90% of the time. And if you support George Bush, you could have strong reasons. Maybe, for example, you like the war in Iraq. I had yesterday a woman running for Congress, Judy Fader, on the show. We talked about the fact, if you, for example, like the way George Bush has handled the economy, you think the economy is doing really well, you think that all this talk about a Great Depression and all this silly, that actually we're doing just fine, then you're going to want to vote for John McCain, who voted for every single one of George Bush's economic policies, save one. In fact, it's interesting, there was a recent Meet the Press. He appeared, John McCain did, yesterday on Meet the Press. And apparently he hasn't voted with Bush 90% of the time. He's voted with him 92% of the time. So I stand corrected. If you think George Bush is 92% right, and you think he's 8% wrong, you're going to vote for McCain. See, if McCain were to come before the American people and say, look, 4 more years, are you better off than you were 8 years ago? If so, vote for me, the same way Ronald Reagan did in 1984. He could do that. That would be fair. There'd be no negative, no push polling, no hatred, no fear and ignorance, no stigmatizing other Americans as not being real. John McCain hasn't done that. And he hasn't done that for very simple reasons. Because his campaign manager has said openly, and stupidly for saying so openly, if we talk about the issues, we lose. We lose. Because the American people, most of them, don't believe we're heading in the right direction. Don't believe that George Bush has done a bang-up job. But I'd like to hear what you think. 888-488-MARK, do you support the current administration? Do you support George Bush? Do you support John McCain? And what do you think of this play to fear and to hate and to ignorance? Barack Obama very famously in his keynote speech before the Democratic Convention in 2004, the very speech that made him such a rising star as a politician, talked about the fact that we shouldn't be separated into red states and blue states. That indeed, guess what? They play Little League in the blue states, and yes, there are gay people in the red states. And what's fascinating to me is that the Commonwealth of Virginia is likely to break that mold in this election. Now, we'll see. Virginia has voted as a red state every year since 1964. But if Virginia and North Carolina and Missouri and Florida and Colorado and even Indiana, heck, possibly even North Dakota and Montana, some people are even talking about Georgia and McCain's home state of Arizona, breaking the mold, voting for Obama. Recognizing, as these people do in the video you saw, Conservatives for Change, they may not agree with all of Obama's policies. I'm not talking to the people who agree with Obama's policies necessarily. You folks are already voting for Obama. I'm talking about the conservatives who, like the guy in the video, saw himself making up things, actually saying things he didn't believe in a way to help the McCain campaign. I think the Republican Party deserves to be around, deserves to save its soul, and sometimes it has to lose its way in the wilderness for a party to find its true bearings. 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. We'll be right back after this.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them. Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can. Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America. Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD Booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD Booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
Here again, The Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to The Inside Scoop. Are you a real American? Are you a real Virginian? Sarah Palin says, actually Nancy Pfotenhauer, the McCain aide, says if you live in Northern Virginia, you're not real. You're fake. You're false. You don't belong here. You're un-American. Get out. Go back to D.C. where you came from. Is that the kind of thing we want in America? You know, of course, what Sarah Palin said. Sarah Palin said, quote, "We believe the best of America is in these small towns that we get to visit, in these wonderful pockets of what I call the real America, being here with all you hardworking, very patriotic, very pro-American areas of this great country." Huh? Wait, if we don't live in a small town, we're not pro-American? Look, I have nothing against small towns, Sarah Palin, but I'm an American too, even if I live in Northern Virginia. What do you think of the politics of division? Whatever your beliefs, whether you're conservative, liberal, Republican, or Democratic, what do you think of the fact that the Republican Party has sought to define some as real Americans, some as fake Americans? Back to Timothy Egan in the New York Times. He writes that Republicans have said that cities are not real Americans. They are nests of, quote, latte-sipping weenies, alt-lifestyle types, and other inauthentic Americans. But we don't all live in a small town. And you know what? We're not all white either. The Census Bureau tells us that by 2023, half of all Americans will be minority. So what exactly is Sarah Palin talking about? Let's face it, John McCain, by choosing Barracuda Barbie, Caribou Barbie, whatever you want to call her, by choosing a woman who is proud of being a barracuda, a self-proclaimed pit bull with lipstick, he decided to appeal to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly. And you know what? He succeeded greatly. No one is happier with Sarah Palin's ideas of not knowing about policy, not caring about policy, not knowing any solutions for the country, but attacking Democrats, attacking Americans. That's the one thing the remnant of the Republican Party, after all the intellectuals leave, that's the one thing that's left. That is the Republican base. They don't believe in anything. They believe in attacking Barack Obama as socialist and communist. They are a party devoid of ideas. And I think it's sad, because there used to be a respectable Republican Party. There used to be a debate. There was a time when the Republican Party didn't have to trot out Paris Hilton and label Obama a socialist or a terrorist. At a recent Palin rally, Timothy Egan writes, the crowd started chanting, "We want Fox." And now it seems that instead of Fox being a propaganda channel for Republicans, the Republican Party has remade itself in Fox's image. And now, of course, if you go to Fox, McCain's winning the election. But we know the truth. I've played it on this show before. Sarah Palin was asked the duties of a vice president 3 times. 3 times she didn't know. 3 times, including one time by a 3rd grader who asked her, what is it the vice president does? And all she had to do was, pull out a Constitution and read it, right? Says right here what the vice president does. In the 25th Amendment, it says, in the case of removal of the president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. But you knew that already. Indeed, I would suggest that every 3rd grader in America who's been educated knows that the primary responsibility of the vice president is to take over if the president dies or is incapacitated. Sarah Palin didn't know the answer. Sarah Palin thought, like Dick Cheney, that she had a role in the Senate. That's right. Sarah Palin thought that, like Dick Cheney, she could control the votes of the Senate. She misunderstood Article 1 of the Constitution. Because Article 1, Section 3, does say the vice president breaks ties in the Senate, and does say that the vice president presides over the Senate, but presiding is not the same as controlling. It would be a shock to the Majority Leader Harry Reid if Dick Cheney walked in and said, "I'm in charge here." I think he'd be thrown out on his ear. You see, what the presiding officer of the Senate does is they keep the agreements that the majority wants them to keep. In fact, you can override the presiding officer by a simple majority vote. You can't even filibuster this one. But Sarah Palin didn't understand that. When we come back from the next break, I'm going to play for you her comment to a third grader when she really had no idea what a vice president's supposed to do. And I think that's Timothy Egan's point. He says Americans, real or fake, can see through Palin, that she couldn't answer a third grader about the duties of the vice president, that she did get a $150,000 wardrobe, but she didn't have this, the Constitution of the United States. This she had never read. Which is amazing because even before she was chosen, she said, I don't know what a vice president's supposed to do. Well, gosh darn it, someone should tell her before they make her vice president. The article goes on to point out that in 2004, George Bush won the fastest growing counties, not this year, the fastest growing counties, the educated counties, the urban centers, the suburban centers, all the growing areas of America full of educated people, full of economic growth, full of young people, full of bright ideas, full of people making America a stronger and better place, they're all voting for Democrats. And so now we have this rump of the Republican Party, a Republican Party that calls where you and I live communist. Communist. Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore, and you're a communist, says John McCain's brother, called you a communist, called me a communist. Not because we support Obama, but because we merely live in the fake part of Virginia. Does this make any sense? Does this win any votes? Does it persuade anyone? Oh, I'm going to vote for McCain because I'm a real American and I don't want to be one of those fake, damn educated Americans. Education is bad. Is that going to convince people? I mean, Sarah Palin, right? She said, look, she said, I'm a hockey mom. She said, I'm a hockey mom. You should vote for me. You don't need to be educated. But it turns out that Sarah Palin wasn't even that, right? I mean, she goes on a $150,000 shopping spree, which most uneducated Americans, most middle-class Americans haven't done. I guarantee you Joe the plumber has never bought $150,000 worth of clothes at Neiman Marcus or Saks Fifth Avenue. Nor, I think, does Joe the plumber use $22,000 a month in makeup and charge donors for that. So it's not that just that she's not very well educated and doesn't know the Constitution of the United States. And, she went to 6 colleges. Lots of Americans went to various schools. I get that. I'm not saying you have to be well educated to be an American. But I'll tell you this. Call me elitist if you will. Call me a latte-sipping liberal. I think you have to be educated to be a president of the United States. That's right. I'm going to lay it on the line. I'm going to lay it on the line. You are a real American if you're a hard-working plumber or electrician or someone who works in the gardens. I don't care what job you do. Every job has respect. Sanitation, right? If you handle the garbage, you have respect. You have a voice in America. But just because your daughter plays hockey, that doesn't qualify you to be president of the United States. And what's fascinating to me is we have 2 of the most educated people in the country running against 2 of the most uneducated people in the country. I mean, Barack Obama was at the top of his class at Harvard Law School. Here's a guy, he had a single mother he was on welfare. He came from poverty. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he used the American dream. He used education to get in to one of the nation's best law schools and to become the president of the Harvard Law Review. Joe Biden also very well educated and also from modest means. In fact, Joe Biden, I don't know if you know this, out of 100 senators, he's the single poorest. 99 senators have more money than Joe Biden. So they come from modest upbringing, but using education, they were able to achieve greatness. It strikes me, I want to know what you think about this, it strikes me that maybe the reason Republicans hate education so much, hate intellectuals, hate intellect, and value ignorance, and consider education elitist, is precisely because education allows people to take the wool over their eyes and to see what's going on in the world. It is education that allows people to know the difference between science and religion. It's education that opens people's minds to people of different ethnicities and races and foreign countries and doesn't necessarily see an American as superior to a person from another country. Education opens the eyes. And what's fascinating to me is the Republican claim that Obama is an elitist. What does that mean? It's not about money. Obama, born to a single mother on welfare. John McCain, married a daughter of a beer heiress. Cindy McCain is worth $100 million. He has 13 cars and 7 houses, although recently, you may recall, John McCain couldn't remember how many houses he had, and that's understandable. You know, after 3 or 4 houses, you kind of lose track. I get that. But elitist in this case is not about money. John McCain's got hundreds of times more money than Barack Obama. So if it's not about money, what is an elitist for the Republican Party today? Let me suggest to you that an elitist is an education. The Republican Party does not want people elected who know about the Constitution of the United States. And that's a shame. The very first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, was another man of modest means. He taught himself the law, but he knew this document, the Constitution, backwards and forwards. Why is it the Republicans, and I shouldn't say Republicans, because there are many good-hearted Republicans out here that recognize what John McCain is doing, but why is it that the Republican Party, the rump that's left, has such disrespect for the Constitution? I mean, Dick Cheney goes around and violates the 8th Amendment, which prohibits torture, violates the 5th Amendment and the 6th Amendment, which says you can't imprison Americans indefinitely without trial, violates the 1st Amendment, separation of church and state, violates the 4th Amendment by wiretapping hundreds of millions of Americans without a warrant. Why is that? Why do Republicans hate the Constitution so much? Let me suggest to you, they hate it because it restrains their power. And they really don't want people educated enough to know that. You know, the kings of England and the dictators like Saddam Hussein kept their people ignorant for a reason. Education means power. And when you compare someone like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, who did very well in school, and I respect that, I do. I'm sorry if you don't respect that. I respect good grades. Compare them with someone like George W. Bush, right, who made C's and D's, or Sarah Palin, who went to 6 different colleges, or to John McCain, right? At the Naval Academy, John McCain wasn't in the top 50% of his class. He wasn't in the top 80% of his class. He wasn't in the top 90% of his class. He wasn't in the top 99% of his class. That's right. He was in the bottom 1%, and he wasn't even at the top of that. 893 students did better than John McCain in a class of less than 900. So this is no intellectual. This is someone who works on his emotions and uses his emotions rather than his intellect. And to me, the ultimate battle, and we'll skip the break because I really want to go into this. The ultimate battle between Republicans and Democrats this election is a battle of the intellect versus the emotion. Let me go to George from Fairfax. George, welcome to the show.
I did have a question for you. Maybe you can just update us on that business in D.C. with the vote counts. What was the outcome of that? The reason I'm concerned about that is because, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Chuck Hagel got elected with 81% of the vote in Nebraska in 2002, which just seems bizarre to me that 81% of any population would support one candidate.
Well, that happens, George. I mean, you do have 81% votes. They do happen from time to time.
But didn't he have connections with the people who wrote the software and the people who made the machines as well?
Well, there is, and I'll tell you. Look, it's hard to know because there are allegations that when there are close races and they're flipped, that it's the machines. I'll tell you this, though, George, and something I'm very proud of. We're not there yet. We have a ways to go. But 35 states now have voter-verified paper ballots. Now, that's not 50. That's not enough. We need all 50. Frankly, I'd like to see that in Virginia, and I'd like all of us to call the Virginia State Board of Elections, not now, but after the election is over, to persuade them to have these kind of paper records, which we need. But look, I want to get rid of all the machines. It seems to me you can have a machine that can tabulate the ballots, but the paper record always has to be the thing that, if there's a dispute, counts, because it's the only thing that we can be sure of. So I absolutely agree with you on that.
Well, part of that is because in 2 counties in Texas, in Comal County, they had 3 Republicans came up with, in 2002, came up with the exact same vote, 18,181. In Scurry County, right down the road, the Republicans won 2 of the seats until they did a recount, a manual recount, and they found that the Democrats won by a landslide. And in that county, in Scurry County, they did a recheck of the optical scanner and found that it was faulty. They didn't bother in Comal County.
George, I'll give you a worse one. Back in Florida, in the district that replaced Catherine Harris, in that district, they had some 20,000 votes simply disappeared. People who voted for a state senator, but they claimed didn't vote for a member of Congress, which doesn't seem to make sense, and the other counties around it didn't have it. And this voter error, doesn't seem like a voter error, this machine error cost us a member of Congress. So you're right, it's a very real problem. Let me ask you this, George, before you go, though. I want to ask you about this idea of the Republican Party and being an anti-intellectual party, much like the Know-Nothing Party of the 1830s. Do you agree with that, or you disagree?
Well, if you look at the history of them, they voted with Ronald Reagan. He wasn't the brightest, whatever. George Bush clearly wasn't that bright. And and I think the Saudis pulled the wool over George Bush's eyes. They did it before with Bush Sr., and I think they followed up with George Bush Jr. when they went into this thing with the war. They planned this whole thing with Iraq from the beginning, and Bush wasn't or didn't care enough to look out for the American public.
I think they're basically playing to ignorance, playing to fear, and look, there are respectable Republicans that are leaving their party because of it, and I welcome them. And I hope that when they leave the Republican Party, that the Republican Party will reform itself to become part of the great two-party system that it once was.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with you. It seems like they're being forced now to do just that, to reform. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Let me play for you. This is Sarah Palin when she was asked about what it's... Let me get this right here. I had it a second ago. This is... Here it is. This is Sarah Palin. She was asked by a third grader what it is that the vice president does.
Finally, Governor,
listen to her answer.
We've been trying to engage some local grade schoolers for the last few elections. We do a feature called Questions from...
I'll play it from the beginning.
Finally, Governor, we've been trying to engage some local grade schoolers for the last few elections. We do a feature called Questions from the third grade.
Good.
Brandon Garcia wants to know, what does the vice president do?
Oh, that's something the Piper would ask me as a second grader also. That's a great question, Brandon, and a vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better for Brandon and his family and his classroom, and it's a great job, and I look forward to having that job.
Did you hear that? The vice president's in charge of the Senate. Well, that's not in here. It's not in here. Someone please tell Harry Reid, the majority leader, step out of your job. Dick Cheney's in control. He gets to make policy for the Senate. That's what Sarah Palin thinks. And she's running for vice president. She didn't mention the most important thing, which is the vice president becomes president if the president dies or is incapacitated. That's the part of the Constitution that we all know, but Sarah Palin doesn't know. And it's important. It's not just that John McCain is the oldest candidate ever to run for a first term in American history. It's that he's had cancer. And the kind of cancer that one study I've seen shows he has only a 30% chance, only a 70% chance of living through his term, a 30% chance of dying. That's a 1 in 3 chance of having Sarah Palin as your president. To me, it's kind of like playing Russian roulette with 2 bullets in the chamber. But maybe you don't want an intellectual as a president. There are people that said, we don't need an intellectual. George W. Bush, no, he's not smart, but I want to have a beer with him. I like him. There are people that attend the Palin rallies and say the exact same thing. In fact, a recent study shows, this is very interesting to me, 2/3 of the people at Palin rallies are men. Only 1/3 are women. Most women in America are disgusted by Sarah Palin. Men, unfortunately, many of them say, well, she doesn't have to know anything, but I'd sure like to sleep with her. That's what they say. Is that what it's come to? I admit it. Sarah Palin is better looking than Joe Biden. Is that the reason you're going to vote for the McCain-Palin ticket? Let me suggest to you that there are real, valid reasons for voting for the McCain-Palin ticket. But hate and fear and ignorance and sexual desire aren't the right ones. You want to vote for McCain-Palin? Here's the reason to vote for McCain-Palin from the mouth of John McCain himself.
Yes, I am. I think the president has led with great clarity, and I think he's done a great job leading the country. Don't you all? The president and I agree on most issues. There was a recent study that showed that I voted with the president over 90% of the time, higher than a lot of my even Republican colleagues. The fact is that I have agreed with President Bush far more than I have disagreed. And on the transcendent issues, the most important issues of our day, I have been totally in agreement and support of President Bush.
So if you like President Bush, you'll love John McCain. That's what Barack Obama's been saying. McCain himself, you saw him brags more than 90% of the time. Actually, the number, Senator, is 92. 92% of the time, you've had the same policies as George W. Bush. So there are reasons to vote for John McCain. If you love George Bush, that's a great reason to vote for him. But let me suggest to you that certain tactics are out of line. These kind of push polls that I got on my telephone, that's out of line. It shouldn't happen in America. And intimidation of supporters, calling the other side, the Democrats, fake Americans or terrorists or socialists or communists, that has no place in America. And it's not just John McCain and Sarah Palin. It's even candidates right here in Northern Virginia. Yesterday, I had on the air Judy Feder. Now, she's a wonderful and very impressive person. She's a former dean at Georgetown University of Public Policy, an expert in healthcare. I hope she wins her election in Northern Virginia. But her opponent, Frank Wolf, who's been 28 years in Congress, has refused to answer questions. He refused to debate right here on this show. And even when people approach him and ask him questions, his supporters respond violently. This thing has no place in America. Let me show you a recent encounter between Frank Wolf, Congressman Frank Wolf, up there in Northern Virginia, and some people who had the audacity to ask him some questions.
Congressman, may I please just ask you a simple question?
Thank you. Hold on, I'm going to make it large for you. Oh! All right, we'll wait while this loads up. But the point is this. Politicians should answer questions. You know, if they're going to go around and they're going to run for office, they shouldn't be afraid of answering questions. What's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with demanding that your politician answer questions? Well, Frank Wolf apparently worked so hard to avoid it that, well, he got a little violent. I really want to play this, and it's not working right now. All right, let's stop it for now. And let's give it.
Congressman, may I please just ask you a simple question?
Oh, here we are. Thank you. Sorry about that. We'll try it one more time.
Congressman Wolf, if I may, please.
Right,
you often have a reputation for not answering.
Here we go. Here's the whole thing. Ready? Go.
Congressman, may I please just ask you a simple question?
Thank you.
Congressman Wolf, if I may, please. You often have a reputation for not answering questions, and we really just do want to know whether or not you intend to pay for your tax credits. Sir, please don't. Congressman Wolf, I know you don't intend on answering a question, but please, will you just... Your constituents really do know, sir. Congressman Wolf, I would really just appreciate a minute of your time. I know you're happy to answer a question, and I just want to give you an opportunity to do that. You say you've been attacked unfairly for it, but if you would please just tell us what the health care...
I've asked this gentleman several times to get his hands off me. And I did.
Congressman Wolf, please.
So what do you have here? Here's a guy, Congressman Frank Wolf, who's represented Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Loudoun County, Frederick County, some other counties, for more than 28 years. And he's so dismissive of a constituent who wants to answer a question that not only does he refuse to acknowledge the person, right? He doesn't say, I'm sorry, I'm busy, I don't have time, I'll have to answer your question later. But his aide literally hits the camera twice. And meanwhile, apparently, keeps getting his hands on this other person against the wall. I don't know all the circumstances here. But I think Congressman Wolf has some explaining to do. This wasn't just his aide doing this. He sat there and he watched it happen. This is the kind of complacency that I think we need to change in Washington. This idea that, oh no, I've been here 28 years, I don't have to respond to voters anymore. You're not from the real Virginia, you're from Northern Virginia. And Northern Virginia is full of communists. So I'm not going to answer your question. I think this kind of divided politics, I've had enough of it. Whether you are Republican or Democratic, it seems to me, particularly if you're a Republican, you need to send a message to the Republican Party this year. Enough is enough. It's not just that George Bush has brought our economy to the brink of the worst recession since the Great Depression. It's not just that the Iraq War goes on without end and it's costing $1 trillion and, frankly, thousands of lost lives. And not just that, but all the veterans that I've seen without hands, without feet, with hooks. And it's not just that. It's this sense of entitlement. The Republican Party has been in charge for so long that they feel they're entitled to be in charge. They feel that, hey, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we do. We're going to rule no matter what. People like Congressman Frank Wolf, who refused to answer questions from a constituent. He's been there 28 years. He's been responsible for the economy. He's been responsible for the war. He's been responsible for American health care. He's been responsible for the biggest budget deficit in American history. If you love big debt, you love Congressman Frank Wolf. But to me, it's not about specific policies. It's about this kind of anger and fear and ignorance and hate and violent actions that I don't think have any place in America. So I would say, if you're an independent, if you're a Republican, and certainly if you're a Democrat, please get out and vote. Virginia, I think, will lead the way in this election. I think you'll find early on election night, if you vote, and listen, voting, that's not going to be easy. You may have to stand in line for 2 or 3 or 4 hours. It is your duty to vote. You know, it's also public record. One of the things I want to do after this election's over is go through and start reading names of people who didn't vote. Because I have to tell you, I'm ashamed of people who didn't vote, and you should be too. It's not that hard to vote. You can vote absentee, or you can stand in line. But it is your duty as Americans, and obviously my choice, to vote for Barack Obama and the Democratic Party, not just because I agree with their ideals, as most Americans do, not just because I think George Bush has taken this country in the wrong direction, as most Americans do, but because I want to see an end to this kind of dirty politics. I want to see an end to dirty tricks. I want to see a party that brings the country together rather than tears us apart. So vote on Election Day. Go to my website, radioinsidescoop.com, and leave a comment. This is Mark Levine.